All right, we want to talk about mentoring today, but first, we all know that a mentor can help you to stay on track in all aspects in your life, but at the same time, your peers are important, right? We have a guest right now. He's going to talk about how comparing to your peers may be beneficial.
Yeah, and in fact, he's the founder of Status Money, and he's here to talk about comparing savings and debts with friend, Mr. Eminem. How you doing?
Good, David. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about your app and what is it able to do?
Well, Status Money is a social financial platform, right? So when you think about money, you don't think social, right? You think you log into your bank account.
Privacy,
Security, but also isolation, anxiety, right? Because you don't know what anybody else is doing. God forbid you ask your best friend, how much money they make or, what their credit score is, because you're going to be, looked on like a psychopath. But the truth is that information is incredibly valuable because you don't know how you're doing until you know how other people are doing, right? If you're making $100,000 in a vacuum, well, maybe that's okay. But if you live in New York City, you're living in a studio, right? So you have to know how people like you are doing in order to figure out how you can improve yourself.
Julia is going to have like 10,000 questions.
I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on all the other social apps, and I'm already super anxious because I see, oh, this person had one strawberry for breakfast. I'm not thin enough. And now I'm like, oh, this person has more saving than I. Doesn't that create more anxiety?
Well, the truth of the matter is people aren't doing that well. And that's a sad reality, particularly in America today. What is true is that 20% of the population, we're talking about roughly 60 million Americans, have negative net worth.
Ouch.
Right? So they have more debts than they have in assets. 60 million Americans. You've got 40 million Americans on food stamps today, right? So if you want to think about it selfishly for a second, you're actually going to be doing pretty well if you're just breaking even, right? So you're probably going to get some good news. That doesn't mean you can't do better, right? But this anxiety, I think, is created because we don't have the information that we need. So what we do is that we imagine we're falling behind, when in reality, most of us are actually doing okay, right? And there's a segment of the population that keeps falling and further behind, and we need to kind of highlight that issue and address it in a more systemic way.
So let me ask a question, though. Most millennial wealth gaps, and Gen Z for that matter, come from people who have student debt and don't have student debt. So if you compare me with my best friend, for instance, my best friend makes way more money than me, but has very high levels of student debt. Yeah. Julia here paid off her student debt, right? So her and I are clearly, so I never had any to begin with. Julia paid it off, and my friend Justin still has it. Yep. So are we really comparing apples to apples here?
Well, I'll tell you, the app compares about 2.5 million unique groups, right? And those are broken down by demographics, so age, also location. So if you live in New York City, you're being compared to people that live in New York City. In fact, even in the borough that you live in, so if you're in Manhattan, you're being compared to people in Manhattan. You can change those things, but by default, you're being compared to people who are similar to you in age, income, location, even credit score, and whether or not they're homeowners or renters. So 2.5 million combinations of these things in the US today, right? Can you break things down by student debt? Yes, you can see that your peers have student debt when you don't, and that's why you're doing better, right? You can see their income, you can see their spending, you can see their credit score. Everybody kind of looks at a credit score and says, oh, well, above 700 is good. But is it good, right? Is it good for somebody like you? Or is it good for, somebody living in the middle of the country making $50,000 a year, and not looking to buy a house like you are? So there's a lot of nuance in this. And the fact that I and my co-founder spent our careers in data science at banks enabled us to kind of pull this information together and make it available to everybody.
Yeah, let me ask you, on the back of David's question, which I thought was a very valid question, is even if you have the same income or social economic status, your priorities in life are different. Absolutely. Somebody might want to get a master's degree.
Some
and somebody
people want
to get
kids.
A house,
Some
right?
people don't want kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that comparison fair then?
Well, the comparison is data, right? So just like any data, you have to take it in context and understand what you can do without it and what the limitations of it are. So does it factor in the fact that you want to buy a home? No, not exactly, right? But you need to account for that yourself. And what we've built is some fancy, machine learning AI that gives you kind of notifications and insights and recommendations based on this data, right? So you can get ahead by understanding what you can improve. right? So if, for example, you have student debt and the interest rate on your student debt is higher than people that have a similar credit score, a similar income, well, you know what? You probably should think about refinancing it. And I'm not talking about marketing here. I'm talking about a real recommendation based on data and facts, right? So that's what the app gives you. Now, there's another portion of the app that enables you to plan for your future. So if you're curious, if you can afford to have a kid, have a house, buy a new car, and retire at age 50, that tool enables you to actually model that out. So you can see that, guess what? According to your plan, you're going to go bankrupt at 45.
Yeah, see, we're
That's
almost
scary.
out of time, but I do want to ask this, very important for our viewers. How do you protect user privacy?
Well, look, the app is built like a bank, right? The fact that both co-founders came from financial institutions, we built the app as if we were building a bank. And we don't move money, right? We don't have access to the cash, but that's how much we value the information that is being provided, right? And we don't sell the data. From day one, we said, look, we're going to treat this like you would treat your own information, because guess what? We were the first people to put our information into this platform, right? So quite frankly, it is the #1 thing that we do.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Fascinating app. Thank you.